Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dream Big podcast with Bob Goff and friends. I am your co-host, Scott Schimmel. I'm here with Bob Goff.
Hey, everyone. I'm so glad you're tuning in again, and you're in for a treat today. We're going to talk to my friend, Levi Lusko. He's got a lot of things to say to us.
Yeah, we are wishing Levi all the best. If you follow him online, if you follow him on social media, you saw over the 4th of July, it looks like he had some mishap with some fireworks and almost lost an eye. But it sounds like he's
crazy
recovering. So Levi, if you're listening, we're wishing you all the best, quick recovery, prayers, and stay away from fireworks.
Yeah, we love you, buddy. And one of the things that we get to explore is all the different facets of life. There's things that are surprises to all of us that happen. Some of them you can see coming and other ones you can't. And so I hope you'll enjoy today as we tune in and take a couple notes. Get a pencil out, get some paper, and say, are there any things that we'll discuss today that'll ping you and might change a couple things in the way that you do what you do? Hey, Levi, thank you so much for making time to spend with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bob. It's a pleasure.
We were laughing because we tried to do this a day or two ago, and the house across the way caught on fire. And I'm trying to kind of keep it cool here as the room is filling with smoke, and I see ashes start coming in through the door. But I'm not like an alarmist kind of guy. So I'm just trying to be kind of cool. And then sweet Maria Goff walks in, and she said she had that look on her face. You're a married man. You know what that look is?
It's called Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we had that look, and I knew it was time to interrupt what we were doing. So I can report to you that my neighbor's house wasn't completely consumed. Our house wasn't consumed by fire, which is a change. For those of you that know me, know that our house actually burnt down. What was it? It was 4 years ago, last week. So glad to be with you.
Well, the best part of the story was when you calmly said, I might need to go get the hose and spray down my roof. And I'm like, we should probably reschedule this podcast. I know the show must go on and all, but
yeah. But I think that probably is telling in terms of personality styles. There's some people, they'll have a hangnail and it's like the whole world came unglued. And it really is whether you see yourself as a victim of the world or participant in the world. And I know we're never the hero of the story. Oftentimes we can be the victim, like something just actually went really wrong. And these days there have been a lot of people with raising their voices and saying, I am not going to allow this to continue to occur. But what I want for most of us is to be participants, because it says, what do we do next? How do you handle, as you're leading a church, as you're a thought leader in this time, how do you deal with difficulties and the chaos that sometimes is surrounding this? People are trying to sort out not only what has happened, what does this mean, but what's my response?
Yeah, wow, what a big question and what an important question. I think what you just said is so important, that you can separate a distinction between being a victim and being a victor, but also to say that protesting or raising your voice against injustice isn't being a victim. I think some people would love to write that off. But those who are saying, hey, there's something wrong and we need to address it, we need to fix it, we need to work on this system, this needs to be addressed, and we need to shine a light on this, I think we have to encourage that. And I think it can be done with the right spirit and the right heart. And I think we're seeing some of that. I think we're seeing people, we've seen it with the movement of women coming out and saying, hey, this is what has happened. This is what's has happened to me. This is the injustice I see in the corporate workplace, or what it's like to be a woman. And I think we're seeing that happen now again. And another important movement forward when it comes to Blacks in America and really with all minorities. I think it's an important cultural moment. And I think I would hope that that as a leader, I would be encouraging people in that regard to see the importance of raising their voice. And it's crazy. I mean, I've never in my lifetime dealt with anything so crazy as any of the one of three things that have happened this year so far.
Yeah,
and this has all
true.
happened in a 3-month period. So I'm waiting to see what chapter of the book of Revelation we wake up in tomorrow.
I think it's probably going to be that like host of plagues. I think there's going to be locusts You're going to
Well,
land on my house.
On Sunday morning of this past week when we were recording this, I woke up early because I heard crazy rain, and I went out onto my deck to make sure my patio furniture was all buttoned up because they had called for rain. There were 40-mile-an-hour winds. My trees were like doing palm trees in the hurricane, and then hail started pelting me, and I'm like covering my eyes from hail, and I was like, "It's the apocalypse! It's all over! I can't take it anymore."
One of the things that's going to happen is that we need to wake up. We need to just be awakened. One of the people I spend a lot of time with is an anesthesiologist, and she's just delightful. And she's told me about what it takes to put someone asleep. And the first thing you do is you put the needle in the arm. What she was saying is the more tattoos the guys have, the more they like squirm around. There's some big tough guy with a big battleship.
I'm pretty tatted up, but I hate needles of a different sort. So I would relate. That would be me.
So the squirming happens, and then she says, like, count backwards. Then she talked about how you can realize that you're becoming awake again. And so that it happens in stages. First, your eyes, like there could be one going way to the right and one way going way to the left. So they're not focused. So the first thing she notices is the eyes start to focus. And then she starts having the eyes trained fixing on something is the next step of coming awake. And then an awareness of who you are, an awareness of where you are, awareness of what is happening around you. I'm like, well, that'll preach. So I think what we need to do is many of us look awake when we're actually are. It's like narcolepsy. We're just like walking in our sleep, but we actually need to wake up. And I would say one of the things that you've provided to just countless people in your talks, passion all around the world has been a wake-up call. What are the things that you're waking up to personally in your life as you're doing this adventure? We've been talking at Dream Big about what are your ambitions, what have been some of the setbacks along the way, how do you move through those setbacks, having your eyes fixed on something that's worth pursuing. Tell us a little bit about how that applies to your life.
Man, I love that metaphor. And I think about we had to take my youngest daughter for a surgery last year, and watching her, just like you described, both go to get put to sleep and then get woke up from that. It was very emotional for me because it gave me a lot of flashbacks for, we had a daughter die, Lenya at age 5, and Clover at that point was 7. So she was pretty similar in age. And, I was doing CPR on Lenya when she had her asthma attack and went home to heaven that year in 2012. And that event really woke me up, Bob. I mean, I talk in my book, Through the Eyes of a Lion, about how I closed her eyes that day in the hospital. But really what I never knew was that God would use her to open mine. And as a parent, having a child go to heaven, it made heaven so much more real to me. I think we talk about heaven, it's just kind of like, oh, well, it's somewhere. But I mean, with someone there, with someone you love there, with someone that came from you, it made it much more personal and much more concrete to me. It woke me up to the existence and the reality and the power of our home. And I know heaven's going to come to earth, and where it is now is not where it's going to stay. But it woke up longings in me I didn't know. And it made me much more excited to go there, to live for it, to live. How I describe it to people sometimes is it almost made this world less attractive, kind of like that old hymn, the things of this world grow strangely dim. I realized this isn't where I'm going to stay forever, this world as it is. And it just made me more excited to live for God's kingdom. That's the first thing that came to my mind when you asked the question. The second thing I would say is, there's that moment where Jacob wrestles with the angel of the Lord. Some people think it was Jesus, and his hip gets detached, and then he eventually has his name changed and his identity becomes solidified as Israel. And I feel like to some extent, I've had to go through some wrestling matches, both with God and even wrestling matches with myself in overcoming personal battles, getting out of my way as the worst enemy of my own self. And so I think those are some of the ways that my eyes have been opened.
Yeah, some of the things that happen inside of us, if we can understand what's going on inside of us, the things we're wrestling with, and then figure out the return address on some of these things. Like sometimes if you're flashing or one of the things I don't like to be is corrected. It's not like that there isn't plenty of room for correction. I just don't like it when people say, hey, you've got that wrong. This is really what you meant. And so I need to ask myself, what's the thing underneath the thing? Like, why is it that has got me sparking a little bit? And
What's connected to that trigger? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I thought Trigger was the name of the Lone Ranger's horse until I actually got into this a little bit of doing that inner work to say, what's the return address? And I realized I spent a lot of my youth being corrected. Like everybody would say, like, do this, do this, do this. And it made me feel dumb. And so 60 years later, I'm the guy that gets corrected and something goes off inside of me because it makes me feel dumb. And I've actually spent a lot of time, even spent time going to law schools and doing these other things to prove to, I don't know who it is that I'm trying to prove it to, that I'm not dumb. Isn't that crazy? If you're listening to this podcast, find a wide spot in the road and to say, what is it that's causing you to do the things that you're doing? Because if you can figure out the return address, if you can find out what caused that, then you can understand and grow into say, I'm a new creation. I don't need to be that guy. I'm not the brightest guy. I'm not the tallest guy. I'm not the wealthiest guy. But I'm God's guy. I'm Bob in process. And part of waking up to ourselves is to realize that we've got a little bit of inner work to do to clear the path so we can let God get onto its next version of you. What are the versions of you? We've been friends for a while, but what are the versions of you I missed?
Well, there's a lot, Bob. I like to, when I go on airplanes, I have to make sure there's overhead bin space for all my baggage.
I can only check two.
Yeah, my gosh, I don't know if that's going to be enough. Fortunately, I haven't been on an airplane in longer than any time in 15 years, and I'm sure you can relate to that. It's been very nice and very strange. I missed the Delta logo.
Yes.
But when I was in middle school, I was bullied, and I was given a nickname, Rat Boy. That's what they called me. I had buck teeth, and I had not gotten my what do you call that, growth spurt. I was all these boys were shooting up, and I was just waiting for it, and
like a
no armpit hair, and I know I was the only kid in the gym class locker room with no armpit hair, and it was just really horrible. I was pretty relentlessly bullied by a group of guys that I wanted to fit in with. And I feel like the rest of my life, I've felt like there are circles that I'm not in, and it's just like I find myself replaying like Groundhog Day. A lot of energy and emotional exertion has been spent still trying to please that group of guys in seventh grade, and so that's really a big thing in my life.
Isn't that crazy? So you have these people that you probably, truth be known, you just don't have a lot in common with them, yet we long for acceptance. And so if you're really busy looking for acceptance from everybody, you won't actually get on with the greater purposes of your life. And so if we could really accept ourselves, just say, and it isn't just a swell idea, it's like Jesus said, I accept you. You're like a terrific Levi. Still in process, got lots of sharp edges. A Bob at 61, still in process, figuring these things out. But living into that, and if we can just call out some of the lies that have been spoken over us or said to us, you're not smart enough, you're not bright enough, you're not whatever enough, fill it in, and then realize, do some of that inner work. Then we can get on with the important work of getting after our purpose.
Yeah, my counselor had me do an exercise once where she had me list out what my personal value statements were when I'm at my worst. Like, what are those things that I value that I shouldn't be valuing? And then write what happens when I believe those lies, when I live for those values, and then a corrected set. a new set. And that was a really helpful thing, because one of the things that I did to compensate for trying to get rid of Rat Boy was to pour myself into productivity. And I feel like at my lowest, I only am if I've done. So if I've had a great day and gotten all the things done on my list, I feel great, enjoy the night. But I self-loathing creeps in, and condemnation if I haven't felt like I've been efficient, effective, productive. And that could be anything: measurable stuff, unmeasurable stuff. How good was a talk? I mean, is it the reaction, the tweets? Is it my staff, my wife? Is it my own feeling of I killed it? Or is it feeling like God said, hey, you were faithful to give the message? And I think because of how I'm wired, productivity is more of a drug to me than heroin. Like feeling like I've accomplished something. So one of the most powerful things I ever read was that Jesus was celebrated by his Father at his baptism before he did anything.
Yeah.
And if I can receive that I'm beloved of the Lord without having done a single thing, then my activity flows from a place of health.
Yeah. Really, it's an intentionality. It's saying, notwithstanding all the circumstances, I'm not going to listen for the loudest voices. I'm going to listen for the truest voices. No truer voice, if faith is your thing, than a Father in heaven that says, I accept you. And if faith isn't your thing, to find true voices around you. And if it's really true about Jesus, then he's going to bust into that room and start making some racket. One of the things that will happen along the way is that we end up so distracted by things we're not actually present where we are. And so take 2020, and it's been filled with all these distractions. What are some of the things that you're going to try to do to try to make 2020 memorable for a reason other than something to do with a virus or civil unrest? What can you do? We got 6 months left, and I want to learn from all of those things, but I don't want those to be the only takeaways from 2020.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I think we were given an incredible opportunity, and all the extra time at home. I think everybody's kind of rallied around the idea and the innovation that comes from the constraints. I mean, some of the best things come when you constrain. I love the Dr. Seuss story. I'm sure you've heard it, that he always tried to use as few words as possible anytime he wrote a book. And when he turned in The Cat in the Hat, he told the editor how many he had written, and it was like 125 different English words. And his editor said, I bet you can't write one using 50, only 50 different words. And he worked on that, took that challenge, ended up writing Green Eggs and Ham using only 50 different words. Because of the constraint. And it went on to become one of the best-selling children's books of all time. And Dr. Seuss, I think, is tied with J.K. Rowling as the 11th most read author in human history. And but that was because of constraint. So it wasn't like he had all the words in the English language. He only had 50. And I think that a list of 50 words: goat, fox, socks, ham, green, And I think when we get stuff taken away from us, it's a chance to look at it and go, hey, what can I do with these few things? There's only 7 notes in the musical scale. There's only 7 colors in the rainbow. What can I do with these few things? And I think we've all been in our homes or without the ability to, travel. And I think in the innovation that look at John Krasinski, what he did with the Some Good News show, or look at any of the ways people have innovated historically when there's limitation. I think Shakespeare wrote a lot of his greatest works during a plague, right? So I'm hoping and praying. I've been personally using the time to work on myself, like you said, the self-work. I've been really working on physical stuff. I played tennis today. I've been trying to do something cardio every day, getting my diet right. And then I'm also working on some new writing. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited. And I'm so excited as a pastor for what I've seen in our church in this time of not gathering. It's been wonderful to lean into new technologies and new ways of approaching community.
I know I really enjoy words as well, and I'm always in the search for a better way to describe things. And I understand sometimes more about my life when I'm understanding more about someone else's life, like Paul was saying, taking a genuine interest in other people's well-being. And so sometimes if you're listening, to just ask that friend, don't go to the first or second question, how you doing? What about whatever your sports team that used to play sports is doing? But instead to ask like Like, really, really. Tell me what your ambition is right now. Tell me what it is that you're hoping for. Tell me something you've longed for. And what you did about it. If we get to those kinds of things, it causes us to actually have to answer those questions for ourselves. What I long for is acceptance. I don't want to be just known for a bunch of opinions. I want to be remembered for a bunch of love. And so if you figure out what you want to be remembered for, I've got lots of years left in me, but to just start angling towards that. And a lot of the things that are just a bunch of nuisances are going to go away. You know, when the house started filling with smoke, I had a different set of priorities than I did before it started filling with smoke. And so that was just like kind of the dramatic thing. At a funeral, you'll have a reflection on the brevity of life. What if we could do that without the drama surrounding some of those things, but just take a deep dive inside and say, what is it that God's creating inside me? Who is the version of me that's emerging, and kind of leaving behind all the previous versions, learning from those previous versions, but just saying, who's new Bob? And new Bob, I don't think is going to get on a lot of airplanes. I think new Bob's done. I have this camp now in San Diego that we bought at just the wrong time. And we have this play. I think I'm going to spend a lot of time. I went tractor shopping yesterday. So I'm just going to make it look good and maybe invite people to come hang out with me instead of me going to Toledo and Orlando and all that. So what about new Levi? Tell me about who you're turning into. You certainly have a bunch of capabilities. I got a drawer full of diplomas and law licenses, but that's kind of old Bob. Tell me about the next version of Levi.
Man, that's so good, Bob. When you said that, I couldn't help but think of Stephen Covey. Begin with the end in mind. Go to your funeral. What are the people saying? They're not going to talk about degrees. They're not going to talk about money. They're not going to talk about Instagram followers. And it's that calling. I think Phil Knight, in his Shoe Dog book, he said, I would tell people in their 20s and 30s, don't look for a job, seek a calling. Seek a calling. He was lit on fire for shoes, the waffle maker, all this stuff. It's just, and that's why we're inspired by the Nike ethos of just do it, and that celebration of the champion spirit. So I'm lit on fire. I think for me, I really do love writing. I'm working on, like I told, some writing again. I'm more excited about it than anything I've ever written. It's been pure and been coming out so healing for me to write again. I'm excited about my marriage. I've got a date night tonight with Jennie. We're gonna go. Thank God, first time in months. The restaurants, we're in phase 2 now in Montana. I'm going to take her to an Italian restaurant and sit on the patio.
Get out of town. Will you send me leftovers? We're still in phase 1.
I'm not doing carbs tonight, so the leftovers will probably just be only meat. But yeah, I will send you some meatballs.
Love Levi.
Yes, and then and yeah, my kids. I just now I raced home to get here from my youngest son is a boy. Youngest child's a boy. And he had his first jujitsu lesson, 2.5 years old, wearing a tiny little gi. And so he was so excited all week for jujitsu. So I'm pouring myself into our team, our church, that's new Levi, not rat boy.
Man, I'll tell you, and that's the stuff you're going to pull out at the rehearsal dinner. You're going to pull out this jujitsu outfit that's like 1.5 feet long, and to say, you used to fit into this. And you're going to now enter into that. You save that thing, buddy.
I am going to start crying, Bob. Thank you.
One of the things that I want to think about is with the ambitions that our listeners might have. Let's say you heard Levi talk about the joy that he's having in writing, and you've thought to yourself, I always wish I could write something. Man, you're one word away from being an author. Start offing, like double it tomorrow. Write 2 words, write a whole sentence. It doesn't have to be a good one. Write bad words, not like cuss words, just bad words, and then you'll make them better later, or whatever blows your hair back. But one of the things that I want us to do is, instead of having this ambition on a shelf that you're not actually releasing into the world, what if God gave you something unique inside of you for the purpose of releasing it into the world. And it starts as this little shimmer to say, oh, wow, I wonder if, and it might emerge into this like little creek that's running, and then it turns into this mighty river. But you won't know until you start writing the words or singing the song or doing the dance or taking the leap or asking the gal for the date or the whatever it is, but to not just make this stuff brain candy. How do you get past the idea of like think it to actually actualizing it?
I think one of the things you have to do is you have to love and live in joy in the space where it seems crazy. That's the best. Last year, Hilton rented less beds to weary travelers than Airbnb. But there was a day when the person said, I wonder if the spare room in my house could potentially be a hotel room. And it was a crazy idea until it wasn't. And I think that when you're at the outset of whatever, a light bulb, the telephone, the x-ray, any new thing, whatever the new Airbnb is, whatever the child of Uber is. I mean, I love that we can go to farmers markets now and buy vegetables with credit cards. Because Square, somebody had a crazy idea. Let's put a cash register device, a point of sale device in every food truck in America. Now we don't have to have cash. Thank you, Jesus. But it was a crazy idea. So a lot of us don't do the things we're meant to do because we're uncomfortable with that feeling of it's crazy, and the people we tell it to tell us that's crazy. But when you get that, use that as a diagnostic indicator that you're probably on the right track.
Yeah, and part of it is right back to approval. If you're looking to everybody for approval, you're not going to get to your purpose. If you're looking to everybody for permission, there's just so many people that are waiting for permission to live a life they've already been given permission to live. And this isn't just like a self-help, go feel good thing. This is like what God, his ambition for us, John 6:29. Your work is to believe in the one God sent. Like that's it. Eyes fixed on me, fully awake to who you are. And now go do whatever it is that you want to do. Something short of knocking off liquor stores, but like go do the things that light you up. One of the things that I use as a litmus test is to say, what do I want? Like just say, what do I want? And then vet it and say, why do I want it? And then decide, what am I going to do about it? So if you could think of those three things, if you're listening, like what do you want? And you say, I want to cure cancer. Awesome. So why do you want that? If you want that for the acknowledgement, or you want that just because it would be a beautiful thing to do, then awesome. That's great. And then what are you going to do about it? Go take the MCAT. Don't just like leave that as brain candy. So to kind of vet these things, and I would put aside what's realistic, because the problem with picking something super realistic is that most of my goals I used to have were easily achievable, and I achieved them. Why? Because I was insecure. So I'd pick really doable goals. What if you pick something that only like God could pull this thing off of? Like, so what's an ambition that you've had that you just thought, besides getting dibs on your wife, what's an ambition you had that you just thought, this is crazy? Like, I don't know how this is going to happen.
We opened a prison church in the state of Montana. We had a real heart for that, and we didn't think the Department of Corrections would ever allow it. But pre-COVID, every Tuesday night we had 100 guys in the general population coming into a cafeteria and watching our church service on the screen. Guys getting out and getting baptized. That was a crazy dream, and then it was real all of a sudden. Right now, I was just talking to our staff. We have an Indian reservation really close to us. And, so many of those Indian reservations, very, very bleak situations. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I dream of doing something to improve life, bring hope, and bring joy to those Native Americans there.
Bingo. I love that. So you have an ambition. Your awareness is kind of peaked. You've become awake to this. And then what's going to happen is you're going to find an opportunity, because you're awake to that. And somebody says, hey, I'm going over to this Indian reservation. And you're like, wow, I've been looking for an Indian reservation. So pull over to the side of the road as we wrap this thing up. Ask yourself, what are the ambitions I've had? What are some of the things that have been stirring inside me? Do like this kind of inner work that Levi and I've been talking about to say, what's going on inside? Who is it that you're trying to earn the favor of or please or get approval from? But just get super real about it. Just say, I'm still trying to get approval from a dad who didn't give approval. I'm trying to get approval from a relationship that went afoul and I still don't understand it. I was deeply wounded. And to just get real with that. And once we get real with that, then it doesn't fix it. It isn't that you just sprinkle the pixie dust and it's done. But now we can understand it and move forward towards these bigger ambitions, newer ambitions that God has for us.
Beautiful.
And one of the things I can leave you with, did you know that Walt Disney had a dreaming tree, Levi? He had a cottonwood that he and his sister would sit underneath and dream big dreams under. I don't know if cottonwoods will grow, but what I'm going to do is try to find you some seeds and I'm going to drop them in the mail to you. And one of the things that would be really beautiful for us to do, whether you're listening or otherwise, is to say, what's the next step? What's a place? It might be Starbucks. It might be a cottonwood tree. It might be the front seat or your Buick. But to find a place, set aside a time and to say, okay, let's just get real. Who's old Bob? Who's new Bob? What's new Bob going to do? Who's old Levi? Who's new Levi? Who does God say you are? And then walk into that. Any closing thoughts you have for the people listening as we're doing some of this work?
I love that. Was that Dreaming Tree in Kansas?
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
Or Missouri.
Oh, Missouri. On the self-work side, if anyone's interested, we're in August, we're releasing a little interactive workbook called Take Back Your Life. And it's a 40-day journey that will take you through questions on and scriptures that will help you build up emotional intelligence and confront the version of yourself you don't want to be. So I'm really excited about that.
And then your wife has a book coming out, doesn't she?
Her book released on May 5th.
Come on.
To Flourish.
She's
such a gem, and this book's fantastic.
Well, you guys find Levi. He is all over the internet. Just a good guy. And he was one of the true voices that I listened to. I don't think you realize the impact that you've had from afar in my life, Levi. And I just hope that you and your family thrive during this time, that you put that jiu-jitsu outfit away somewhere because you are going to get some use out of that thing later, and that you and I would both be awake, not only to our friendship, but then the possibilities around us. It's an Indian reservation. It's a neighbor across the street who's hurting. It's a male person. If we can figure out those things, then I think we end up living into the life God has for us. Levi, thanks a million for making the time. We're going to get some of the contact information for Levi in the show notes. And Levi, thanks a million for taking time.
And we'll send those meatballs your way, Bob. Thanks a lot.
All right, man. So long.
You know you've got dreams hidden down deep inside your heart. And maybe you didn't have what you felt like was the confidence to pursue them. Maybe you feel like you don't have the permission, or maybe you just don't know how to chase them, how to organize your life around your big ambitions. Well, after a long wait, Bob's new book is now available. It's the Dream Big book, and you can get it, pick it up today. You can read it like an old-fashioned book. You can also listen to it. Go to thedreambigbook.com and order your copy today. Okay, Bob, one thing that Levi said, I took notes on. He said, a lot of us don't do the things we're meant to do because we're uncomfortable with that feeling that people tell us that we're crazy. Now, you did something crazy. We've talked about it before. You bought a camp, and then there was a whole pandemic and a shutdown. I'm dying to know what's going on at camp. How's the update? What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely empty. Not one soul there. We have 24
tumbleweeds,
24 wild turkeys. I don't mean like just young men. I mean, there are wild turkeys that are walking around on Main Street there. But here's the thing. I want to fail trying. I don't want to fail watching. And so when you'll see an opportunity like we did, and if you've been listening to this podcast and the series that we've been going through, you'll see some opportunities. I don't want you to chicken out just because things might not turn out the way that you were hoping for, because I want to live in constant anticipation. That's just not a make-believe world. What it is it's looking towards the horizon and reminding yourself, why did I start this? And I knew what I wanted to do is create a place where people could get some rest and some peace and quiet. And so I just believe in the right time, it's going to be the right place for the right people.
You also wrote a book, and it came out a week or two ago. And I know you probably don't want me to bring this up, but it hit the New York Times bestseller list. I just want to say congratulations. That's awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
A guy can barely spell cat. But this is really a tribute to all the people and many of you listening that have supported the Dream Big, not only the podcast, but this idea of saying, what's your ambition? What do I want? Know why you want it and decide what you're going to do about it. And so I think it's a idea that resonates, particularly at this time where we've suffered and continue to suffer some really significant setbacks. I want you to remember why you started out on this thing. Why did you start the relationship? Why did you start the career? Why did you start the nonprofit? Why did you buy the camp? Why did you get the car? Just go back. And then for some of those things that need a quarter of a twist, a little tweak, make the tweak. Yeah. And then just what I do, eyes on the horizon, but know where your feet are.
Well, whatever summer looks like for you, go and pick up a copy of the book or download it. You can listen to Bob talk to you and explore your big dreams for what's next, because there's certainly going to be a new day. The question is, what are you going to do and what are you going to go after? So thanks, Bob. We'll see you next week.
All right, everybody. Have a great week.